Every afternoon, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large, lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there, over the grass, stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 peach trees. The birds sat on the trees and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen to them. "How happy we are here," they cried to each other. One day, the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with him for 7 years. After the 7 years were over, he had said all that he had to say, for his conversation was limited, and he determined to return to his own castle. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in his garden. "What are you doing there?" he cried in a gruff voice, and the children ran away. "My own garden is my own garden," said the giant. "Anyone can understand that, and I would allow nobody to play in it but myself." So he built a high wall all round it and put up a notice board. "Trespassers will be prosecuted." He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had nowhere to play. They used to wander round the high wall and talk about the beautiful garden inside. "How happy we were there," they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country were little blossoms and little birds. Only in the garden of the selfish giant was it still winter. Once, a beautiful flower put its head out from the grass, but when it saw the notice board, it was so sorry for the children that it slipped back into the ground again and went off to sleep. "I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming," said the selfish giant as he looked out on his cold, white garden. "I hope there is a change in the weather." But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden, she gave none. "He is too selfish," she said. So it was always winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow danced about through the trees. One morning, the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It was really only a little linnet singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird singing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. "I believe the spring has come at last," said the giant, and he jumped out of bed and looked out. What did he see? He saw the most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. And the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all round it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still quite covered in frost and snow. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could. But the boy was too tiny. And the giant's heart melted as he looked out. "How selfish I've been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here. I will put that poor little boy on top of the tree, and then I will knock down the wall, and my garden will be the children's playground forever and ever." He was really very sorry for what he had done. And the giant stole up behind the little boy and took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossoms. And the little boy stretched out his 2 arms and flung them around the giant's neck and kissed him. "It is your garden now, children," said the giant. And he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to market, they found the giant playing with the little children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. Every afternoon, the children came and played with the giant. But the little boy, whom the giant loved, was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, but he longed for his first little friend and often spoke of him. "How I would like to see him," he used to say. Years went over, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about anymore. One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. Suddenly, he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. It was certainly a marvellous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered in lovely white blossoms, and underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden he hastened across the grass and came near to the child. And when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of 2 nails, and the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet. "Who hath dared to wound thee so that I might take my big sword and slay him?" "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant, and a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms.